Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up for discussion on our Viewpoints panel. A big reason for the gap between rich and poor that people don't like to talk about. Later on, we'll be addressing surviving your divorce. Stay tuned. Here are the issues we'll be presenting today to our Viewpoints panelists for commentary. A startling new book called Marriage and Caste in America highlights a gap no one likes to address between the rich and the poor created by divorce. A new law about to be implemented in Quebec could set the stage for a two-tier medical system in Canada. And can we strike a balance in our approach to the green debate? Later on, we'll be talking about surviving your divorce. I'll be interviewing a lawyer on that. But first, let's meet our Viewpoints panelists. Paul McKeever is leader of the Freedom Party of Ontario, and Krishna Naipal is an author. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Christine.
The first article we're discussing here, now it's entitled, The Ozzie and Harriet Gap. Take a look at the headline. What this says in a nutshell, it addresses the gap between rich and poor and says that it's actually created by divorce. Now, the article refers to a book that was put out called Marriage and Caste in America. It was written by Kay Heimowitz. So the article highlights some of the facts written in that book, as well as, of course, the commentary by Margaret Wente from the Globe and Mail. Interesting information she puts out here, and some of it can be, I don't want to say offensive, but a little politically incorrect how she states it. Now, we're going to be piecing this apart as we go, and I'm going to start with you first, Paul.
Sure.
What was your analysis of this article?
Well, you know, I don't think, apart from, like, as you say, some of the stuff got a little racy, but the general message, I think, was one that wouldn't surprise too many people, I think, who have known people who have been in either families that have broken up or families that were never together in the first place. And, but I think there's an unspoken root problem here. What isn't addressed, at least in the article by Ms. Wente, is why did these people choose either not to get together or to separate in the first place? And so I think that's really left unaddressed. It's not simply a matter of money and education. There's something deeper there, and I think it's a moral issue. Really, I think you know, this is what we're looking at as a result of a consistent approach to harmony in society, which says there are no rights, there are no wrongs, everything's acceptable, do not judge. Well, you know, when you don't condemn what's wrong, you actually fail to praise what's good. And when you don't fail, you know, when you don't praise what's good, you end up with a society that doesn't value good.
Something Margaret says that's very interesting here. She says, and I'm quoting her here in this article, the more educated a woman is, the more likely she is to marry, stay married, and raise her children together with her husband. She goes on to highlight a CBC presentation that was done, a radio presentation that was done featuring the Jamaican Canadian community in Toronto. Metro Morning is the name of the program, and it talks about the problem plaguing this particular group where the fathers are absent. Now, this is one group we're talking about here, but it's worthwhile to remember in this article that she also contrasts that to another article that she saw in the Toronto Star that talks about the poverty issue, and it tended to be a bit stereotypical as they highlighted a white woman with a nose ring that was never married before. But in her report here, in her commentary, she's basically suggesting that all of the issues surrounding poverty are not addressed. And I want to know what you think about that, Krishna. Do you think she was fair in this analysis that she gives?
No, I don't think it was very fair, because I saw some of the points that's raised here in terms of there's so many varying issues, really, that to just pick up one or two and say that this is what is going to make a marriage work, or this is going to get rid of poverty, I think it's really minimizing the whole problem of poverty on the one hand and marriage on the other hand. I mean, if we take the Indian model in terms of, you know, most Indians get married by virtue of arranged marriages. And there's many people who have looked into that. They have seen that it is a model that really works. And not only do people stay married, but it's true that people get ahead, and there's accumulation of wealth and education and everything that really goes with it.
Which goes along with this article.
But on the other hand, to really pick up two ethnic groups here, the Jamaican community and then the Inuit on the other hand, I think it was unfortunate that these are only two examples we have in Canada. But I think if you look at others and other variables, I think we'll find a totally different picture. And from that point of view, I think the article is shallow, if I may say so. It addresses a very important issue. We have to talk about poverty, and we have to really get at the question is, well, why do marriages break up? Why they break up in marriages, and what are some of the things we could actually look at in terms of really helping to bring this back in a wholesome state. But I don't think the article really deals with the selection, and in terms of just dealing with the Aussie, Harriet model, that in itself too, well, she talks about 3% of marriages that makes up this gay, party. It in itself is, that too is very selective, and she hasn't said anything about that in terms of, well, is it working? Is it working better than heterosexual marriages? I mean, those things we really haven't seen anything about that.
Well, the article was intended to establish a correlation between marital breakdown and poverty. And I think for that we can give Margaret some credit here, because I don't think this has been analyzed enough. Now, this Toronto Star, they actually launched, quote, its annual war on poverty, she calls it. I saw two criticisms of this, and she criticized it from the point of view it did not really get to the roots of what causes poverty in her estimation. But I also saw another critique of it, in that the suggestion was there were erroneous numbers and stats being thrown out when it comes to this poverty line. Nobody seems to really know for sure what that is. Yet you find many people saying, well, X amount of dollars per year is what actually makes up the poverty line. So that you see, well, again, with that criticism, there tends to be a bit of an agenda behind the whole poverty issue without really dealing with what the issue is. And she's saying the absence of fathers, the family breakup. I mean, even from a logistical point of view, you've got two households now being paid for, whereas it would have been one before. Yeah,
obviously much more expensive to carry on two households than to carry on one. And that's why, of course, a lot of support arrangements don't get honored. And then we turn to enforcement, taking away a person's license, which then means they don't have a job or a way to get to their job, which means we create a whole cycle of non-payment and non-responsibility, or non-responsiveness at least, to the needs of the child and or the other party. So, yeah, I don't think that, it was a newspaper article. So, of course, she doesn't have that much space to get into the root causes, but I think the root causes, we're looking at the sizzle, not the steak, when we talk about, these are the effects, not the causes. The money, the poverty is the result of a lack of education, and perhaps more educated people do get together and stay together, but I think there's another reason, another part to the puzzle that's not being addressed here. And I think that's just a fundamental acceptance that there are rights and wrongs in society, and some people believe there aren't, and those are the ones who are suffering.
I'm curious what you would think of this particular statement, whether you thought it was derogatory on behalf of the writer or whether you thought it was just being honest. Educated women don't disapprove of single motherhood, but they just don't go into it for themselves. What did you think of that comment?
Sorry, so they don't disapprove?
They don't disapprove of single motherhood. They're not going to point fingers and say, well, you're single, you're this, you're that, but they don't do it themselves. They seem to know the route they want to take for themselves and their children and progression, as you were suggesting in the Indian community, but nope. Well, they want to take it themselves. There
we go again, though. That's the non-judgmental status quo. We don't want to say that any one sort of arrangement is any better or worse than any other, and that's where we will end up saying that things that are not working as well we'll pretend that they are working as well when they're not. And I think in any society where you want the good to prevail, you have to be prepared to say what's wrong and to say that it's wrong, and not just to pretend that everything's peachy keen no matter how bad it gets.
She doesn't think minimum wage, raising minimum wage is the answer. What do you think?
No, it's economically extremely unwise.
We're going to go for a break on that. When we come back, we'll be talking about, well, the possibility of a two-tier healthcare system in Canada. We'll be back after this. Stay tuned.